Okay, so with that, good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you to the Psychology Department's annual mental health program. Every year we focus on a different topic, but today's talk will be the effects of marijuana. We want to start our program by thanking Dr. Walter Franzik and the Liberal Arts Department and Dr. Scott Friedman from the Counseling and Student Engagement Department for their support in helping bring our speaker to campus today. Thank you to the Psychology Department and for their support every year in giving us ideas on topics to be able to present on. And they help us make this program very successful every year. And finally, thanks to all of you. Thanks to all the audience members for supporting and attending our program. We can't host programs like this without our community and without our audience. So just a couple housekeeping items. Our speaker is going to speak for roughly 40 minutes, 50 minutes, about an hour, and then she's going to have some time at the end for questions and answers. You're going to see myself, and you're going to see Professor Baker, who's in the audience too, with two microphones that we're going to be coming around, and we're going to be asking you to raise your hand, and we're going to give you the mic, have you ask a question, so we're going to be walking around with the microphones, waving our hands. For any counselors that are in the room that are looking for CEUs, there's a CEU table right outside with the green tablecloth where you'll fill out your certificate, and I believe your certificate will be mailed to you. Any full-time faculty members in the room that are requesting PGUs, Mitch has placed PGU forms outside in the lobby as well. Please fill those out. For students in the room, if your teacher has a sign-in sheet, a lot of teachers don't have sign-in sheets for this. My students are turning in a small paper in lieu of a sign-in sheet. If there is a sign-in sheet, it's going to be outside. And also these yellow cards, if you happen to have one, there might not be any left, but if you have a yellow card, we're going to ask you to fill it out and then turn it into the people that are at the doors at the end of the program. So we're honored to have Janice Gabe with us today to shed light on the age-old question, how does marijuana really affect us? With studies showing increased usage over the past decade, it's a question worth answering and exploring. So we're thankful to have Janice join us from Indianapolis. Janice Gabe, who is founder and president of New Perspectives in Indiana, is a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW, and a certified addictions counselor with over 35 years of experience in working with teens and families. Ms. Gabe specializes in the treatment of clinically complex teens with a variety of co-occurring disorders. Ms. Gabe has lectured extensively throughout the entire country. She's authored several books and produced several videotape series for parents and teens. She's recognized as one of the country's leading experts in the needs of issues that are facing teens and their families. Join me in welcoming Janice Gabe.
I forgot to turn on my mic. I'm seriously technologically challenged, and I think I should get disability benefits for that, but no one tends to agree with me. But I did manage to get my mic turned on. Thank you very much for coming. We had a really good discussion earlier this morning in the earlier session. I will leave quite a bit of time for questions. I think probably we can use that time. If not, we have a ton of material that we can talk about. I'd like to do a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm an adolescent and young adult therapist. That's what I do. Never worked with any other population, don't want to work with any other population. I started out actually working with adolescents. But the thing about adolescents is they grow into young adults. And so kids would say, do I have to quit coming? And I would say, well, I guess not. And now they call me, and since I've been doing this for a very long time, I'm actually seeing the kids of clients that I used to see when they were teenagers. So, I've been doing this a very long time. So as time went on, my practice shifted to about equal parts young adults, people between 18 and about 25 or 26, and teenagers between the age of about 12 and 17 or 18. So, and I told the group earlier, it's kind of interesting that I'm actually standing up here talking about this topic because I began my career working with really kind of hardcore juvenile delinquents from the city of Chicago. I did not care if they were smoking weed. I just wanted them to not throw me through the window on any given day. I could care less about that. I didn't worry about it. I didn't think about it. I felt like we just had so many other issues we had to deal with that I wasn't going to really waste my time with that. But the funny thing was that the longer I talked to teenagers and the more I watched them grow into young adults, and I've had an amazing life watching young people grow into young adults and watching them go through young adults into their adulthood and being able to stay in touch with them. And the more I saw that, the more I started to see some things, some patterns that were somewhat of concern to me. And I realized that to be good at what I did, I really needed to find out more information than I had. And that was my first thought, that your opinion, Janice, doesn't really mean very much. You've got to look at the research. Because in my clinical practice, some of the things that were happening to my clients and to my kids kind of snuck up on me. I wasn't expecting to see some of the problems that we were seeing. So at that point, I started researching it, and I am a nerd. I read the research all the time. I'm a walking encyclopedia of a bunch of worthless information. The best research comes out of the medical journals. I am not smart enough to read those things, I'm just going to tell you. And so it takes me a great deal of effort, but that is where the research is. And it's a wonderful time to be doing this for a living because we've got some amazing research. It's just incredible to see how much really amazing information that we do have. And you know, what I want to start with this is that one of the things that we know so much about that we have not known anything about previously, or not very much about, is just kind of what goes on in the brain. I mean, to me, I read as much as I can about brain development. It's kind of annoying to me because my son has a degree in neuroscience, and after one semester of college, he knew more than I did. And I'm like, but I worked so hard to get this information, and you're way ahead of me, so just explain it to me. Make this simple for me. But one of the things that I think that we've really not paid attention to historically is just the whole concept of how very, very important the brain is. And the brain is, I mean, it is an amazing organism. It's so fragile. It's so precise. It's so delicate, it's so fine-tuned, it's so complex, and it does just incredible, amazing things. And it is so well balanced. It's designed to do incredible things with little bits and pieces of substances and chemicals. And we also know, and this is also amazing to me, that we can really impact the way our brain grows and develops and changes, particularly in the most important time for our brain to grow and develop and change is from about 12 years old to about 25 years old. It is just incredible to watch that your brain gets larger and it adds gray matter and it's just sitting around waiting to be activated. And it is really, really true, more true than I wish it was, that what you do during that time frame affects your brain for the rest of your life. I mean, it's that critical. And I'm not just talking about what drugs you put into it. I'm talking about what kinds of activities you do, how you spend your time, nutrition, how physically active you are, whether or not you play a musical instrument. Those things actually change the course of your brain development. I find that fascinating. So given that, that's where my interest in marijuana comes in. And the fact that my clients are asking me a ton of questions I did not have the answer for. And I thought, to be a good therapist to the people who are asking me answers, I better go get the answers. So I started this process of researching and collecting information, and some of that information is information that I want to share with you guys today. We have a lot of information. We don't have a lot of time, but I will definitely spend a significant amount of time asking questions. So here's my first premise about marijuana. We don't respect marijuana, okay? We don't understand it. We underestimate it. We think it is a simple plant. It is not a simple plant. Marijuana is an extremely complex plant. And so, we have opinions about it. Those opinions are not necessarily based in fact, but we really need to respect it. And I will tell you, I don't think we respected it, and we didn't respect the science behind it when we made it illegal and when we classified it as a drug, okay? I also don't think that we're respecting it or are looking at the science behind it when we're trying to use it medically. We're not treating it with the respect that it deserves. So I think that, one of the things that I want to do today is maybe provide some information so we can understand this plant that everybody has an opinion about, everybody is fascinated with, everybody, they want to know more about it. So I want to provide that information. And here's the thing about it. When I say it's a complex plant, it's a plant that consists of thousands, hundreds to thousands of biologically active compounds. We know it has THC in it. It's got way more than THC in it. We understand that. THC is enough of a puzzle to us, but to think about all the other compounds that are active in marijuana, there are 3 species of cannabis. That's basically the bottom line. There are lots of strains, there's lots of variations, there's lots of hybrids, but there's 3 species, and the concentration levels change, and those are impacted by growing techniques, time and storage, things like that. That a single plant of marijuana contains 480 biologically active chemicals, not 2, okay? Not 2 cannabinoids, 480 biologically active chemicals. 66% of those are what we call photocannabinoids. They're produced within the plant itself. Between 80 and 100 of those are different psychoactive chemicals produced in the plant. And really, there are more than 100 psychoactive metabolites that are produced when our body attempts to break down marijuana, eliminate it from our system, pass it through our system. And smoking it in particular, and we're going to talk, we have more research on smoking it than we do other routes of ingestion, but by smoking it, it creates 2,000 chemicals from the combustion process alone that affect both the brain and the body. So the idea of anytime you put smoke in your lungs, we need to stop and pause and think about that for just a minute. We also know that regardless of where the marijuana comes from, regardless of if it's legally grown, regardless if it's illegally grown, we have found in the plants, of course, like we do in even our food source, insecticides, rodenticides, pesticides, fungus, bacteria, residual solvents that have been used to process it, to grow it. And that's what we're inhaling and putting in our body. The other thing that is real critical that we look at is potency. Because people always go, what does it do to you? How long does it stay in your system? What are the effects of it? Well, the effects are drastically changed by how we use it, how long we've been using it, and what the level of potency is, and the amount of frequency with which we use it. Frequency is an important question. More college kids today are using it on a daily basis than ever in our history. Okay, we don't even have enough research fast enough to tell us when we change the frequency, we change the potency, we're going to see a different plant altogether. We're going to see different reactions. We don't have enough research to even tell us what that exactly means. But in the 60s, people were smoking, marijuana that had 1 to 2% of THC. In the 80s, it was 4 to 6%. Currently, the average is 15%. There are samples in Colorado that are as high as 19 to 30%. Now, think about that. The difference between 1 and 2% and 30%. The level of potency is much, much, much stronger. And we have some new challenges as well. Dabs, which is a highly concentrated, form of THC that's mixed with honey oil and wax and butane, and it's extracted. And we're looking at by using butane, alcohol, water, and other solvents, and manufactured sometimes on the tip of nails, so it's pretty toxic. We're looking at 80 to 95% levels of concentration. So we have to really think about, what do we know about 80 to 95% concentration of THC? We don't know much, okay? We don't know that much. We know a lot about lower levels of concentration, but we do know, we've always said that marijuana doesn't kill anybody, and I always say, yep, marijuana hasn't killed anybody. We now know that's not even accurate, because in my city alone, as well as across the country, we have people that are using dabs and they're dying, okay, because they're having some pretty serious psychotic breaks, and they're dying not through the marijuana, but through the actions that they take when they're using that. So that's just like a whole different level. So we know that side effects from that tend to be pretty long-lasting, and they tend to be kind of psychologically traumatizing. People have some really horrible experiences. We know that it affects their heart rate and their pulse rate. We know that young people are actually suffering heart attacks as a result of that. And we also know that people are having some problems with severe long-term psychosis, because we know that. We know high levels of THC actually can cause psychosis. When I first saw that research, I did not even believe that. I'm like, what? You've got to be kidding. That doesn't make any sense. But when I really, really researched it, I understood why. Because the part of the brain that's responsible for reality testing versus living in psychosis, not being in touch with reality, is very, very closely connected to the THC receptor sites in the brain. So now I understand it a little better. Okay, so, and here's the thing. People kind of lump marijuana into one category, okay? It's all about, it does this, it does that, it does this, it does that. Well, we know a lot about the two primary active cannabinoids in marijuana, okay? And we know that they are very different and they serve very different purposes. And if you're really going to respect it, you have to understand the difference between these two and the role that they play and the benefits and the potential complications or side effects from each of these. And the first cannabinoid is CB1, and that's the one that we're familiar with. It's THC, okay? And THC, the receptor sites, if your brain didn't have receptor sites, your brain wouldn't have a reaction to it. So the receptor sites for THC live in your brain. Really, no place else in the body. It lives in the brain. So the impact that it's going to have is going to be in the brain and, and not necessarily other parts of the body. So we know that it's located in the cortex and the subcortical brain, and that's what's responsible for getting people high. And THC is the primary activator of the CB1 receptor sites in the brain. So the second cannabinoid, which we really need to focus on, I think, and get more information about, is CB2. And basically, that's CBD, okay? You've probably heard that term. And all the receptor sites for CBD are not in the brain, okay? They're in other parts of the body. They're in your stomach, and they're in your back, and they're in all other areas of your body. And they're not psychoactive, okay? They don't get you high, okay? It's the THC that gets you high. And actually, CBD and THC tend to fight with each other. They kind of oppose each other. So, for CBD to really work medically, it can't have a lot of interference from THC, which basically means if we're going to engineer marijuana for medical use, CBD needs to be really high, THC needs to be really low. In fact, isolating CBD out of the marijuana is probably going to be kind of the direction we're going to go with using that for medical purposes. So it doesn't cause euphoria, and what it does is it interacts with the immune system. So if we think about physical health challenges, we have so many challenges now with autoimmune diseases. I mean, that is one of the biggest health issues that we face. And what we're actually finding out is that autoimmune systems problems result in inflammation in the body. And we have so much information about having inflammation in your body creates a neurochemical process in your brain that mimics depression and mimics anxiety. So we used to think people had problems in their body because of their brain. We now know people have problems in their brain because of their body. And so CBD, if you think about all the potential medical applications for it, it really comes from the work that it does because it works within the immune system in the brain, which then impacts all kinds of other health issues. So as a result of that, there's some indication and research being done from the very beginning phases to fairly well-documented research about how do we use this medically? What can we do, to benefit this? And so, we're looking at the benefits potentially as an anti-seizure med, lots of animal studies, a small but promising amount of studies for humans with that. We know that, did I skip a? Okay, the other thing that we know is it looks like it perhaps has some neuroprotective properties with diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, stroke, MS. So we know that it has some ways to possibly protect your brain from some of the ravages and complications of those diseases. We know that it serves as an analgesic or a pain medicine for neuropathy pain, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer pain. We know that it serves, as I've said before, as an anti-inflammatory for the brain as well as for the body, because inflammation from your brain comes from your body. With a small preclinical trials with humans and definitely with animal studies, it seems to have an anti-tumor impact. People talk all the time about how marijuana cures cancer. Okay, well, there's promising beginning research that it can actually shrink tumors. That's what we're talking about. But it hasn't been researched very extensively with people yet, but the research does look fairly promising with that. And that it can increase the growth of tumors and the metastasis of tumors. So far, that looks very promising. Okay. We also know that it can serve in some really small clinical trials, maybe having an antipsychotic impact on people with schizophrenia, Parkinson's disease. We also know that some small clinical human trials that it really kind of tends to have some promise for reducing anxiety, reducing especially social anxiety, helping people process and deal with traumatic memories from like PTSD or childhood trauma. And interestingly enough, there's some really like preclinical trials looking at that it may actually, for people recovering from heroin addiction or morphine and opiate addictions, that it might actually decrease cravings for those substances. There are a lot of interesting research about what types of things reduce cravings for those substances. So basically, if we're going to really look at where the promise of benefit from medical marijuana comes from, it's really from this substance. And, who knows what else? But what we know, and it's these substances. And, here's the thing about marijuana. We have learned more about marijuana in the last 5 years than we have in the thousands of years that we've been researching it. So the amount of research that's coming out is just amazing. It's just incredible how quickly it's coming out. So we know a lot more than we've ever known. And also, it's important to look at who really led the charge with some of that research. And the very first research was done in the Netherlands. Okay, a lot of the research we're going to talk about today started in the Netherlands. So obviously, the next thing we need to do is we need to engage in talking about like this debate about THC or CB1. Okay, that everybody wants to debate about marijuana. I don't really want to debate. I really just want to kind of talk about the facts. But so these are the common things that people talk about. People say, well, it's safer than alcohol. Here's the deal. I'm not going to argue that alcohol is not safe, okay? I'm not going to argue that alcohol doesn't have some pretty serious physical consequences and some pretty serious emotional and cognitive consequences. I'm not going to argue that fact. In fact, I think one of the issues with alcohol is that you suffer a lot of consequences from alcohol in the short term because it turns you into an idiot. I mean, you get in trouble because you get drunk and you want to fight somebody, or you cheat on your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you want to leave. This is like the typical Friday night. I deal with this every Monday morning in my office. Or you want to leave and drive drunk, or you can't find your mom's car, or you don't know where you're at, or you're blacked out. So seriously, we know that 50... I read some research and I'm like, oh, I really wish I hadn't seen that. 50 hangovers, okay? I read this research. 50 hangovers causes some pretty serious, perhaps irreversible neurological problems. When I first read that, I was like, oh, 50 hangovers, okay. And then I'm like, oh God, 50 hangovers. And I was like, oh shit, 50 hangovers? Like, that's like a month for most of my clients, It's like, this is bad, this is so bad. So I'm not gonna debate, you're not gonna get me in a debate that alcohol, especially used in excess, is a good thing, or alcohol used on the developing brain is a good thing. I'm just not gonna go there because I would agree with you that it's not a good thing. The deal is that it's just different than weed, okay? That they have a different impact on the brain. And it's different for women than for men. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. It's not fair. It's never fair. Women can't drink as much as men without having serious problems because of it. And people say, well, geez, it's better than heroin. I'm like, once again, really, no shit, everything is better than heroin, okay? I mean, seriously, is that the standard? If I'm not shooting dope in my arms, it's all good? I mean, heroin, lethality, and I deal with a lot of heroin addicts. I know some wonderful young people who are struggling. I have so many young people who have years and years clean from this. It is such a serious, significant journey for them. I'm just amazed that they're able to recover. But yeah, 2 years of heroin use, your brain looks like an Alzheimer's patient. The ability to last 2 years using heroin is very slim. So I'm not even going to talk about it the way I talk about heroin because they're two completely different things. So yes, marijuana is safer than heroin, okay? Put that down. I said that. Put it in the news. But we're not talking about that, And the more we focus on how bad heroin is, the less we focus on all the other things that we need to really look at. So I think even Barack Obama said it was less dangerous than alcohol, which is fine, that I'm not going to say less. I'm going to say it's really, really different. So, and we can spend a lot of time, people have opinions, and everybody has the right to those opinions, and we can spend a lot of time kind of debating, is it bad for you, is it not bad for you? To what extent is it bad for you? Is a little bit of use okay? And we can kind of debate all that stuff. The reality is this. The reality is that the most important thing you got in your body is your brain. Your brain is much more fragile than we ever realized. We're finding that out more and more. It's so very important. The best thing you can do for yourself is to be kind to it, and be kind to it when it's doing the most work. The rate of change that your brain goes through from the age of about 12 to the age of 25 is tremendous. It's tremendous. It's very, very important. So here's the deal. We really need to look at helping people understand that it's very significant and it has a significant impact on your brain when it's developing. People always say to me, well, this is the time I should be smoking weed. I'm like, no, honey, this is not the time. You should be smoking weed if you're going to smoke it when you're 25. Okay, this is not the time. Today is not the time. Now is not the time. And we don't understand. I totally get that. We don't understand. We don't think about the brain. We didn't think about it for years because we knew very, very little about it. So part of respecting marijuana is to respect honestly, legitimately respect what it does to the developing brain. And we know this. We know that the earlier you start, the more significant problems that you're going to have with it. The earlier you start, the more problems you're going to have with it. So I really want to talk about just really honestly, what are some of those problems? What are we looking at? What can we expect? And this is based in science. I have friends who are scientists. Do you guys know scientists? Here's the deal about my friends that are scientists. They're not extremely fun people to talk to. And they really don't care about your feelings. And they have very little preconceived ideas about anything. They are just all about the science. I mean, they're just all excited about, looking at things and understanding things and trying to prove things. They have no emotional investment in anything, because trust me, I know several of them. They have no investment in anything. They just want to put this stuff together, do their research. They get real excited about the research. They can't wait to share it with people. So, and most of the science, as I said earlier, the people who led the science about THC, particularly with adolescents and young adults, was the Netherlands. They have very liberal laws about marijuana use over there. They were very, very surprised about what they found out, in fact. They were very surprised by what they found out. So let's talk about, we've known about some of the emotional, psychological issues with marijuana use. We, for a long time, didn't know why. We didn't know where it came from, how it worked, because we're just learning about the brain as we go. We know so much more about it. So I'm going to talk about the whys, which I find fascinating. You can't always do much about the whys. I was at a dinner one time with a Harvard psychiatrist and a PhD from Johns Hopkins, and they're like, isn't it wonderful, Janice, that we know so much about the developing adolescent brain? I go, yes, it's very wonderful. Isn't it just so exciting? Yes, it's very exciting. So we know why they do that stupid stuff. I'm like, uh-huh. They're like, but we don't know how to make them stop. I go, I know, that's where I come in, okay? I don't get to do the research. I get to know why they do it. I don't necessarily know how to help them not do it, but at least we understand why. This is the why. This piece of information is the why behind some of the information that I'm going to share with you guys in a few minutes. There's a thing in your brain called anandamide, okay? It's an internal cannabinoid, okay? You have to have an internal cannabinoid or your brain, THC wouldn't have anything to connect into in your brain. So you have an internal cannabinoid that serves a very important emotional function in your brain. It's not anywhere outside the brain, it's in the brain. It's very, very, very fragile. It breaks down very quickly in the body, unlike THC, which is very potent, very strong cannabinoid that stays in your body. And so the role of anandamide in your body is that it really, it's like this. It's really synthesized in the area of your brain that's responsible for memory, higher order thinking, thought process, movement control, learning, pleasure, concentration, sensory perception. That's why all those things are impacted when you're high, and many of those things are impacted when you're no longer high. But what it does is it really is the volume control for the neuron production in your brain. So basically, it communicates with the sending neurons. And it basically says, here's the deal. I need a little bit more dopamine, but would you chill out a little bit on the serotonin? I could use some GABA because I need some neuroepinephrine flowing through my brain. It's emotional control. It kind of regulates the production and the release of that in your brain. Very fragile, very precise, lots of things that we do impact that process. A lot of things we do other than smoke weed impact that process. So it's very, very important. And so it kind of helps the neuron activity to be balanced, not too much, not too little, okay? And so it is the receptor site. So what happens is receptor sites are like locks that keys fit into. And so amandanide is a teeny little bitty lock, okay? Fits into the key, disintegrates very quickly, gets the job done, comes back and does it again. THC is a big lock, okay? And it goes into the receptor site. It goes into the lock where the amandanide needs to go, and it stays there, okay? It stays there because it's long-acting. It stays in your brain for quite some time. So then you don't have the ability for the internal cannabinoid system to work. So basically, I know this is not a great picture, and I'm sorry, I couldn't find a better one, but basically, these are the neurons. This is the synapse. This is the communication from one neuron to the next. We used to think that information in the brain just went this way, one way. We now know that it goes this way. And the way it goes this way is this neuron releases neurotransmitters, which are uptaked by this neuron, and the process goes over and over again in your brain. This little substance, this internal cannabinoid, amandanide, comes up here, and it goes into this receptor site, and it regulates what I need less of, what I need more of, keeps that fragile balance in the brain. So in all aspects of your brain, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So when THC is sitting in this receptor site, this production gets suppressed, and then it gets shut down. Just goes away, because if it doesn't have a receptor site, if it doesn't have a place to go into your brain, it's gonna get suppressed. It's not gonna produce anymore. So what happens is, instead of this being regulated, this kind of just all gets frozen out. It just gets all chilled down. It really slows down the production of those neurochemicals. It doesn't look at, do you need more of this or more of this? It doesn't do any of that. It just kind of chills that whole thing out, which is why you feel all chilled out when you smoke it. I love it because it chills me out. I hear that all the time. Yes, neurochemically it does, and this is why. But here's the problem. So when you're high, you don't really care that your amandanide's not working. You could care less about that. But when you're not high, you care that it's not working, because now it's not there. Your body doesn't have the ability to use it. And we know that marijuana actually is physically addicting. It has a 14-day withdrawal process. It's actually a medical diagnosis in the diagnostic manual. But what happens in that process is that it takes about 14 days for that to start to reproduce again. So through those 14 days, if you're using frequently and you try and quit using, through that 14-day process, that whole process shuts down. You have no amandanide. You have no regulation. So you're cranky, you're irritable, and you're really, really irritable and anxious about day 12, 13, or 14, which, if you look at it, that's when people start to use marijuana again. And what they really don't realize is they're treating the withdrawal symptoms of their marijuana use. And with all things, it takes that, many weeks beyond that to kind of go back and take care of the regulations. So I've talked about that already. So as a result of that, when you start messing with the thing in your brain that regulates your neurochemicals, that impacts your mood and your focus and your reward center and all that good stuff, you're going to have some issues with that. And the longer you smoke and the more you smoke and the higher potency that you smoke, the more issues are going to happen with you neurochemically. So that is why some of this stuff is going on. So I want to talk, about the psychological piece of this. And here's what's interesting, and in a way not very fair. What's interesting about this is that people really do not experience on a daily basis an awareness of short-term impact of marijuana use. With alcohol, you have immediately short-term consequences. With marijuana, you're like, hey, I go, I smoke weed, I hang out, I eat, I go to bed, I wake up, I feel fine the next day. That's why people like it. People are assuming that, hey, I can function better, I don't get in trouble, I tend not to cheat on my girlfriend, I don't do those things that I do when I drink, so therefore it's safe. I totally understand, that is how it feels. It feels like, no problem. The problem is it's a little bit sneaky. It's kind of a sneaky substance that it sneaks up on you a little bit gradually. But what was most disturbing to me was it's not the immediate consequences that we really have to worry about. What we really have to worry about the long-term consequences. So, we have a lot of research on looking at young people who started smoking when they were, 14, 15, 16, and we know that there's a huge difference in the brain that develops, the 14-year-old brain who smokes weed and the 17-year-old brain that smokes weed. We know that the younger you are, the more it actually creates a ton of problems with your frontal lobe, most important part of the brain, when you're younger. Okay, so we know that people most at risk to develop some of these problems are people who started earlier and used throughout adolescence. So there's risk, probably less significant for people who use less, started using older, and much less risk even, then if you, as I said before, don't start until you're 25. So not that I'm advocating, okay, everybody, you're 25, go out there just like when you're 21 and drink, okay? Go out and get high. Not saying that. I'm just trying to give you the facts here. This is the research that came out in the Netherlands, and really they did a 10-year longitudinal study with teenagers. 10 years. And this answers the question that I was seeing all these kids who kind of looked like they were doing okay. I mean, they weren't doing maybe great. And then all of a sudden, they hit college and they came apart psychologically. They came apart. And that is, by the way, the trend that we're seeing. All the colleges are saying, man, these kids come in as freshmen and they're just like falling apart on us. We're very concerned about this. And so what we started to see is that the long-term risk is that people are entering young adulthood who maybe have had minimal problems prior to that, but now they're twice as likely to have, things like anxiety, schizophrenia, psychosis, depression, as they move into their young adulthood. About the time they hit college, that those things start to be a problem. And they're shocked by that. And so, like I said, the 10-year longitudinal research was really done in the Netherlands. It was duplicated in several countries. They did some research in Colombia. And we also know kind of across the board that marijuana use and alcohol use as well, one of the primary indicators for suicide in the adolescent population. We know that, dopamine is the reward center of your brain. It's the thing that you like, okay? And what we know is when you enter adolescence, you have way, way more dopamine receptor sites than you need. And so, any substance you use. So dopamine is your reward center. It rewards you when you do something pleasurable, whether it's accomplishing things or achieving things, or whether it's, having sex or eating good food or playing some awesome video game, or even, to be honest with you, like looking at internet porn, especially when you're young, your dopamine levels, adult dopamine levels are here. Adolescents are here. When adults get a dopamine bump, they get it like this. When you're an adolescent, you know where your dopamine goes when you get a bump? Way up here. So you're like, oh, I like that. I'm going to get me some more of that. Okay, that was good stuff. And that more or less continues, okay, throughout your young adulthood. Now, and that settles down. The older you get, the more that settles down. Unfortunately, you don't get this anymore. You get this, okay? So that settles down. But if you have been artificially stimulating your dopamine for your entire life, or the last several years of your life, when you no longer artificially stimulate it, what happens to it? It just gets lazy and it won't produce on itself. So you end up, when you're not smoking weed or putting something in your body to artificially stimulate your dopamine, you're tired, you can't focus, don't have a lot of enthusiasm, don't have a lot of energy, because that's what happens. Your dopamine is not dancing. Your dopamine is sad. And you constantly are looking for some way to have that dance again, because that feels good when it does that. So, and the brain shuts down all those receptor sites as, with the more potency and the more more potency and the more we're using it. So the other thing that I really am upset about when I looked at the issue of marijuana psychosis, I have several clients who went to college in different states. Several of them went to college out west. Many of them had obtained prescriptions out there for medical marijuana. And so they were using lots of medical marijuana. Most of them ended up coming home unsuccessful in their attempts at school. But what was really sad is that I had 6 kids in a relatively short period of time who came home all because they had marijuana-induced psychosis. And what was really sad about that is they got kicked out of school, okay? And their doctors are like, I can't give you any more marijuana. You have to go home and get into therapy, okay? And, you know, when I say we don't respect it as a medication, if I take a medicine, any medication, it comes with like 7, 8 pages of potential side effects. I'm a nerd, so I read that. I want to know what I'm putting in my body, what I'm doing to my brain. I read all that stuff. So these people are prescribing marijuana. To my clients, I take this kind of personal, you know, to people I care about, to people I've known for years, and who I know struggled to get where they were going, and they don't ever talk to them about the side effects. So the kids are like, what is going on here? What is happening to me? And they come home, and they've flunked out of school. They're devastated. After about a year, 3 of those kids are pretty good. They can't smoke weed anymore. Every time they smoke, they go off the deep end. They're pretty good. A couple of those kids are not good, and I don't know if they're going to be good. And one of those kids is, okay, we're still waiting to see what happens, you know. And so that all happened within like a year and a half. That's a lot. To me, that's a lot of kids. That's too many people, you know, I take it really personal. So, you know, when I say we need to respect it, I do respect it, and that's why I try and give people the information they need to make the decisions they need to make, because I know they're not getting this information. You know, and people go, well, how can you do that? Well, I don't know. People give people addicted drugs all the time and don't regulate it. You know, just because the doctor gives it to you, there's absolutely no indication that it's a really good idea to take it, you know, or, you know, look at how we're using it. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we know about the cognitive impact of marijuana. You know, and this was an interesting piece of research that when I read this, once again, I was surprised because it identifies the cognitive impact of what they consider to be, the scientists who did the research, heavy marijuana use. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of heavy marijuana use, I think it's like daily or maybe near daily. Okay? That's what I'm thinking, that's heavy marijuana use. What they identified as heavy marijuana use was 5 times a month. Okay, that really kind of blew me away. I was shocked by that definition. I was like, really? But once again, they're scientists. They only care about at what point does this start to interfere with your cognitive functions? At what point does it start to interfere with your ability to optimally operate from a cognitive point of view? So here's what they found. No marijuana use in the last month. 27% of the kids got grades that were C's or lower. 72% got A's or B's. 1 to 4 days a month, 42% of the kids got grades that were C's or lower. 58% got grades that are A's or B's. 5 times a month or more. Okay, that is what they're identifying as the point in which it affects your academic ability. 55% of the kids got grades that were C's or lower, and 44% of the kids got grades that were A's or B's. So, you know, that's a pretty significant change. And I'm not kidding you. I'm just going to tell you the truth. When I read this research, I'm like, that can't be right. And I am looking at the source, and I read the whole project, and I was looking numerous times to check to see if there was a typo in the report, and it was accurate. And I was so shocked that I wasted a bunch of times trying to figure out, really, is that true? It's another slide that talks about the same thing, basically. And so let's talk about the why. Okay, let's talk about, you know, we know about the why of some of the emotional issues that it creates. Let's talk about the why of some of the cognitive issues that it creates. You know, and so here we go. Okay, this is the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for many things, but really is the regulatory system in the learning process. It creates a substance, a chemical, a neurochemical, that helps you take sensory input, put it into your short-term memory, you rehearse it, put it into your short-term memory, and then you pass it into your long-term memory. That's what that substance does. What we know is that marijuana suppresses that substance in the brain, and the more you use, the more frequently you use, the heavier potency you use, what happens is that it secretes it, reduces the production of that substance to the point that just goes away, okay? If you don't use it, you're not going to continue to produce it. So we know that eventually just goes away. So marijuana impacts the short-term memory, alcohol impacts the long-term memory. So if you're doing both, you're probably kind of screwed, you know, that not only do you not remember in the short term, you're having trouble with the long term. And that then leads us to what we know about the long-term impact hitting the wrong button up here. The long-term impact about just the learning process in general. And so I'm going to talk about that. And also, because we can scan the brain, I think that's amazing. I wish I had that machine. I'd scan everybody's brain. I'd be running around scanning everybody's brain. I think that stuff is, I just love that stuff. But what we also know is that because we scan the brain, we know that the hippocampus is left active. We also know it's a lot smaller. That really, because what we do to our brain really does impact the structure of the brain. So some of this stuff I'm going to kind of pass through. I do want to talk about college kids, that we have not done a great deal of research with college kids, so the research we've done I think we need to kind of pay attention to. I think it's pretty fascinating. So the thing I liked about this research, it was the first piece of research that actually looked at women, okay? We always look at guys. All this research is done on guys. I don't know why we're not looking at women. I don't know if we think you guys aren't smoking weed. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But we actually looked at women when we did this. And basically, it was a controlled study. And what they did was they took a group of college students who smoked weed in the last month. They weren't really heavy. They weren't high at the time they did the study. They weren't even really that frequent or that heavy users. And they scanned their brains. The ability to scan the brain has opened up an amazing amount of research for us and an amazing amount of information. So they scanned their brain. And they scanned their brain while they asked them to do a very simple, what we will call a location task. So what that is me saying, if I'm in my office, saying to someone who's sitting there, go to my bookshelf and bring me that statue of that leprechaun and bring it back here. That is a location task. It's a very simple task. And what they did was they scanned the brains of the kids when they were doing a location task. And what they found is that the amount of energy that it took to do a very simple task was very disproportional to the control group, very disproportional. So what they also found is that the more complex the task became, the more difficult it became for people to actually do it. And so they were quitting. They were quitting because it just takes too much focus, too much concentration, which answers my question when I'm always saying to my kids things like, seriously, go home and hit the send button for your college application. How hard can it be? And they're like, it's just a lot of work and it's a lot of effort and it makes me anxious. I'm like, seriously, bring it in here and I'll hit the damn button for you, okay? It's not that hard. That's what it is. I was like, that's why. That's why we talk about that amotivational syndrome where you kind of, lose focus and have a hard time activating yourself to do like little tasks that you need to do. That's kind of where that comes from. And here's the piece with women, okay? What they found with women, that not only did it overactivate the emotional center of their brain, that their emotional centers of their brain were large and their frontal lobes were smaller. And I really did not like that research because I was like, the whole world, this is what we need, more emotional girls, more emotional women. I don't want to be a more emotional woman, and I don't really want to deal with more emotional women. So that really made me very unhappy when I saw that. But, so now the question is, why do women and men respond differently to it? Hopefully we'll have some result of that. So, so really some frontal lobe alterations really with women that we did not see with men. So I'm going to talk about IQ here for a little while. There is a piece of research, once again, looking at guys who, I didn't even know they were actually doing this research. They looked at guys from middle school to high school. They looked at their IQ test prior to, in middle school, their IQ test in high school. And there was a lot of correlation about what their marijuana history was, everything from mild use to pretty significant use. They retested their IQ throughout their lives until they were 35 years old. Okay, they continued to test the IQ drops. They found up to an 8-point IQ drop over that period of time. And then when they retested, I am going to talk about this in a minute, but when they retested it, what they found was that they were not able to recover those IQ points. Now, in all fairness, I will say that was because we previously have not known how to help your brain recover. We know more about that, and we'll probably talk about that before we wrap up today. We know more about what your brain needs to do to recover, so that's a good thing. We'll talk about that. So basically, here's 8 IQ points. If you have an IQ of 100, you're just kind of in the middle of the pack. 50% of people are going to do better than you. 50% are probably going to do worse. If you lose 8 IQ points, you're now at 92, okay? IQ of 92. What that now means is 78% of the people are going to do better than you, okay? So you can see what a significant drop that is in IQ points. And the fact that even when people discontinued using as adults, they never fully regained that. Now, it's not universal. It's not like they didn't regain any of it, but they never got back to their baseline IQ. And the really sad thing about that is most people in adolescence pick up a couple IQ points. So they lost IQ points, and they also did not gain the IQ points as we all know we get wiser, as we get older, hopefully. So I want to talk just a little bit about, probably talk about maybe one more piece of research, then I think I'm going to have you ask questions. I do want to talk about a recent phenomenon. It's very recent. Really just started to surface pretty significantly in the last probably year, and it's called Cannabis in Mauritius. And it's bizarre. We don't know why it's happening. We don't know what causes it. We don't really know how to treat it. And what it is that I have about 5 or 6 clients. It's supposed to be very rare, but I have 5 or 6 clients who ended up having very severe, life-threatening nausea because they could not keep anything down. They could not stop throwing up. They did not respond to any medication, and they all ended up in ER visits. When they first started going to the ER, nobody knew what was wrong. They would call me. I'd say, let me talk to the doctor, because I knew what it was, because I'd done some research. I was shocked that that's what it was. And the diagnostic implication for that, the main thing that the way you diagnose it is that it's been chronic. There's been no factor. You have absolutely nothing physically wrong with you. Does not respond to medication. And the only time it quits is when you take a hot shower. That's all we know about it. So if they ask the question, does it quit when you take a hot shower? I tell people this because for the first few clients that it happened to, when I really looked at their history, they didn't just wake up one day. They started having unexplainable gastro problems. So, if your stomach bothers you and you're nauseated, you smoke more weed, right? Because that helps, okay? That unfortunately did not help them. And so they got, really serious, and most of them had to be in the hospital to be rehydrated, quit smoking weed, quit throwing up. But it's about a 6-month process for their system to kind of calm down. And I tell people that because I don't want anybody to go through that and not understand kind of what it is that's happening with them. One more piece of research, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. The other piece of research which I thought was fascinating is, and it answers another question, and that is that we all know that person who goes to school baked every day and they make straight A's. You know that people? It's not usually my clients, but they all know somebody. I actually did have that kid walk into my office one day. I was like, great, okay. So he goes, what do you think about that? I'm the valedictorian of my class and I smoke weed every day. I'm like, I don't really know. I wish you'd gone to somebody else's office because I don't know what to say. So this piece of research was interesting. What it talked about was, the good news is THC doesn't impact your ability to use information that you've known, And some people, these people, I find them kind of annoying because I'm not one of them. They're just wicked smart. You know those people? They just know everything. They just have accumulated information in their brain for all these years. They're just so smart that they really are going on information that they've always had in their brain. And so what happens with those people is that they use what they've known, and marijuana doesn't impact their ability to use what they know. It does impact their ability to process, and utilize, input, process, remember, and utilize new information. So when they get to levels in school where they now have some real challenges academically, they really struggle with not understanding, why this is happening. And they'll call me, I thought I was smart, Janice, but now I think I'm stupid. And it's like, you are very smart. You are not stupid, but you've reached the point where you have to learn. They're like, yeah, I know. I never had to learn before, and I can't learn. So it really impacts and for those of us who are not that smart, I would be one of those, it impacts us far earlier. But that's the answer to that mystery about why can there be people who smoke weed, but they're just really get good grades, they're brilliant. That's why. Okay, so I want to spend the rest of the time answering questions. So please, any question or comment you'd like to make?
So we've got a couple microphones, one on this end, one all the way on that end too. If you have a question, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. We'll give you the mic, and then Ms. Gabe will try to answer your question. And we ask you guys, if you have class, we understand, but we ask the rest of the audience to please stay.
About how long does marijuana stay in your system?
That depends. How long does it stay in your system? That depends on, it's about the concentration level. The concentration level is controlled by frequency, and it is controlled by also by concentration, how much you're using, how often, how you're using it. But the bottom line is there are two different things with that. When we think about how long does it stay in our system, we think about how long does it stay in our urine, or how long does it stay in our blood. But so, it might be out of our urine anywhere from a week to 6 weeks, but it's still in our blood, it's still in our brain, and it takes about 6 months to really kind of clear that out of your body and out of your brain. So I don't know what you're asking, but people usually want to know about how long does it stay in your urine. That depends, and that really is about concentration. How long does it stay in your body? 6 months, sometimes longer, and it stays in your body in a way that it continues to impact you. It stays in your body longer than 6 months, depending on how long you've been using, what you've been using, how you've been using it.
Awesome. We have another question over here.
These changes that you're seeing in the brain, if someone stops using marijuana, are they then reversible or are they permanent?
That's a really good question. If someone stops using marijuana, are they reversible or are they permanent? There was a piece of research that looked once again at guys who smoked marijuana throughout adolescence, from middle school to high school, and they did IQ tests. They were scoring up to 9 points lower on their IQ test in their adulthood. They tracked them for 20 years into when they were in their mid-30s. What they found is most of them did not recover those IQ points. There were varying degrees of that, but most of them did not recover that. I just want to talk to you about IQ points. So if you have an IQ of 100, that means you're smack in the middle of the pack. Half the people are going to score better than you, half are going to score worse. If you lose points, 8 IQ points, that puts you down to 92. Now we're talking about 72% of the people are going to score higher than you, and as opposed to 50%. So, and 38% of the people are going to score better than you. It changes the dynamic significantly. But okay, that said, what they found is even when people quit, they didn't regain all those IQ points. However, I will say this, part of that was because we historically have not known how to help the brain heal itself. So what we now know is if you clean that out of your system and you do some things to protect your brain, if you take omega-3 vitamins, which is a huge brain nutrient, if you take niacin, which is like this huge vacuum cleaner that goes through your brain and cleans out all those toxins, if you exercise, if you take vitamin B and D3, those things will help your brain recover. And if you do things you haven't done before, like take a cognitive task that you absolutely hate, which for me would be anything involving math, and you work your brain, that your brain can recover some of those things. But we had no information about that at that point, and we still don't have widespread information. We're not talking about that. So you need to also, if you can do things that harm your brain, really focus on doing some of those things that will protect your brain.
We have another question over here.
You mentioned the cannabis incubus, the rare medical condition. Mm-hmm. What is the defining factor in analyzing that, or basically seeing somebody who has that? What's the defining factor?
Here's the diagnostic criteria, which is kind of sad. The diagnostic criteria is uncontrollable nausea, okay, does not respond to medication. But here's the diagnostic criteria. If you take a hot shower, it will stop. The only thing that will stop it is a hot shower. If you get out of the shower, it will start again. So the defining diagnostic criteria at this point is that those previous mentioned things and taking a hot shower will temporarily give you some relief. But it won't stop it permanently, just give you a little relief. Non-responsive to meds, nothing else going on in your GI tract, it's quite a mystery. Like we need another one of those. We don't know what causes it, we don't understand it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So some of my friends, they're like, the heavy stoners, but they have like bigger dreams than like most of my other friends that don't smoke. Is that like something that happens from marijuana?
Interesting. Your friends who are heavy marijuana users, they have bigger dreams than other people who don't smoke. Well, yeah, because it kind of makes you sit around and think about all this wonderful stuff you'd like to do. So having those dreams, I think, that's very often the case. But it's like sometimes the ability to kind of activate yourself in the direction of making those things happen where, they may struggle. And Okay, it all depends on your brain too. There was a piece of research which I also thought was interesting, and it talked about how, we all know this person, and let's face it, they annoy us. It's that really brilliant person. They make great grades. They go to school stoned every day. They're baked every day, but they make awesome grades. Well, this is what we found out. We found out that some people, if you're just wicked smart, okay, to start with, marijuana doesn't change your ability to use what you already know. And there are some people who just know a lot. Their brains just like collect information. But it definitely interferes with your ability to input and utilize new information. So some people have, like, they're on track for these awesome things in their life. And they smoke a lot of marijuana because they're just wicked smart, which is not me, okay? I mean, I'm not that smart. I can't afford to do that. But then they get to college and they hit a class, and sometimes they're freshmen, sometimes they're sophomores, sometimes they're juniors, and they don't know the stuff, and they're like, I'm an idiot. They come back and they're like, Janice, I'm an idiot. I can't learn this stuff. So those are kind of two ways to look at that. But that does answer the question why some people can go to school baked every day and get great grades. Not that many of them, but they're out there, and there's a reason why. So I think there may be other answers, but that's what I think.
Janice, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You were talking about people who smoke more than 5 times a month have memory issues, attention issues. Could it be possible that one of your clients could come into your office, or a family brings a young person into your office, believing that they're presenting with ADHD?
Oh, absolutely.
Where it could be the marijuana causing that effect?
Yes. Absolutely, that marijuana and ADHD, they mimic one another. The symptoms are identical. You can't develop ADHD in middle school, okay? It has to be, you have to be heavily symptomatic in childhood for that to be diagnosed. But we have a lot of young people who are presenting. In fact, with every one of my kids who smokes marijuana, I'm always asking them, do you have a diagnosis of ADD? Because that's what we're looking at, So instead of saying, yeah, that, and the bottom line is, there's really not enough Adderall in the world to change what marijuana does to your memory. So yeah, absolutely, it's a very much overdiagnosed in that population.
Excuse me, what are the easiest ways to detoxify the brain once people have used marijuana for long?
Okay, what is the easiest way to detox the brain? Oh man, I love that you asked that question because I love this kind of stuff. You got to take vitamin B, complex B. Okay, there's a neurological process to every one of those vitamin Bs. I don't have time to talk about it, but they're critical to your neurological level of functioning. Particularly in that, you need to take niacin, an additional niacin. Niacin will detox your brain, it cleans it out. Omega-3s, which I talked about before, that help your brain, they're antioxidants, they're anti-inflammatories, they clean your brain out. They give your brain a massive, massive dose of nutrition to help it heal, like structurally heal. It's the thing that we give people who have had brain trauma and concussions, so lots of omega-3. Rigorous physical activity 5 times a week. There's a part of the brain that will not recover no matter what you do if you don't get moving and you don't do rigorous physical activity. Vitamin D3, okay? And playing a musical instrument, I don't care. I don't care if you suck at it. I don't care what you do with it. Playing a musical instrument structurally heals your brain, and making your brain do things that you struggle with. So whether it's that you start doing jigsaw puzzles, or you do tanagrams, or you do word searches, forcing your brain to work on focusing on some of those details. That's the best way to detox your body. There's no medicine that we know of yet to do that.
Okay, hang on.
Yes.
So after all of these negative effects that you were talking about, what were the main reasons that made some of the states in the U.S. legalize marijuana?
It goes back to what I said in the beginning, in that people they don't understand it, they don't respect it, they're not looking at the science behind it. And in my opinion, they didn't look at the science when they made it illegal and classified it in the first place, okay? And they're not really looking at that science now. And so, and people, even the idea of, prescribing marijuana medically. If you're going to prescribe a medicine, it has to go through really rigorous testing. It goes back to we don't respect it enough to rigorously test it to identify what is it really indicated for, and what are the effects of that. I personally have some real issues because I have 5 or 6 young people that I care a great deal about who went out west to go to college, and they were legally prescribed marijuana. All of them, the 5 or 6 I'm talking about, had psychotic breaks because they were prescribed high-potency medical marijuana, and they were cut off. They were kicked out of their schools because they did some bizarre things, sent home with nothing except you need to go see your therapist. 3 of those kids are fine. 1 of those kids is not fine, and it's been years. The other one's kind of like, okay. So that really concerns me, because when you are given a medicine, you're given like 8 pages of potential side effects. We're not doing that with marijuana. We are not respecting it. We're not researching it. We're not looking at it. And the main reason that it is legalized, really, to be honest with you, from a government perspective, is it's legalized because people want tax money. And people want it to be legalized because they like to smoke it, okay? But they're not making choices, and that's my whole thing about, people make their choices. People are men and women. They're gonna make their choices. That's fine, but let's do it with some information.
We have another question over here, Janice.
Yes.
So do you believe that an individual who is an adult should have the right to peacefully steward the contents of one's own consciousness in the privacy of their own home?
I'm not, what I said earlier, I'm not getting into the legal issue with that, because it gives me a headache. I really try and focus on the person that I'm talking to. And also because I'm still gathering information in my own head about that. I don't have, after 35 years, I'm sorry, I'm processing this too slowly. I don't really have a strong stance one way or the other about that, and probably I won't have a strong stance until I see what's up with that, what's happening with that, and what impact it has kind of nationwide, and what impacts it has in the long term on health and some of those things. So I really am, I'm processing, I'm a social worker, I process all the time. I'm trying to process information, and we'll see what happens, with that, so.
We have another question right here.
Yes. I have a friend that works at a marijuana dispensary in Colorado, and she had told me that they have marijuana for different types of conditions.
Yes.
Anxiety,
yes.
Like a certain type of marijuana for anxiety, and for different medical conditions.
Right. And if exactly. So, and that's what we were talking about. What does the research indicate that is beneficial for those various conditions? The research indicates marijuana high and CBD are indicated for those medical conditions, especially over the long term. Okay, so it has been. I travel around the country. I've seen a lot of different scenarios that communities are dealing with. So if we're really saying we're really formulating this marijuana to treat seizures or to treat pain or to treat anxiety, it really is the CBD. In fact, we know that THC over the long haul does not help anxiety, particularly social anxiety. And you guys see that. People start smoking socially and then become more and more socially anxious the often they smoke, and they often become more isolated. So that is how it should be, and it should be based on research. So if we're going to do it, if we're going to prescribe it, if we're going to produce it, we need to do it based on what we know about what is indicated for those particular medical conditions. Yes?
Hi, I was wondering, how does, smoking weed before you go to bed affect, your brain and, the way you sleep? Because, I heard somebody, smoked before they fell asleep, and they woke up dead because the smoke rose to their brain. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to know, does it have a bad impact when you go to sleep, right before you smoke? And does it, really help you sleep more relaxed, or is it, bad for you?
The question was, what does it do that you heard of someone dying before they went from smoking because of the way the smoke interacted with their brain? And I'm going to say that I've never seen that at all. I'm not saying it's not out there. I read a lot of this stuff, but I haven't seen that. But yes, people talk about that it helps them sleep, okay? One of the reasons it helps them sleep is because it kind of freezes out that whole neurochemical process and slows things down in your brain. That's why it helps initially. Why it then becomes a necessity for some people is that it interferes with the production of natural levels of melatonin, which is what your body uses to help to put itself to sleep and keep itself to sleep. And anandamide also has a lot to do with, finding some ways to help you sleep. And so and it depends on how much in potency, but when you've smoked enough that you've shut that process down, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to go to sleep without something to aid you until that process reboots itself.
Hi. My question is kind of weird.
I can't see you.
Where are you? I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I was a habitual pot smoker for like 8 years, and going to things like these kind of brings out a sense of hopelessness in people. So I'm kind of curious, like there's a lot of problems that were addressed here. What's the solution? I mean, I'm not a little bit old, I'm like 25, so it kind of makes me feel a little bit hopeless sometimes, like, oh, my brain's going to be screwed when I'm older.
Well, and that's why I talked about the things that you can do, which to me, I wish there was like a simple, here, take this and you'll be better. But that's what's like, and what is amazing about the brain. That's why when the research came out and said, hey, there's no way, I mean, these people didn't recover their IQ points, okay? So when we had that research, that was very discouraging. But then we realized more about the brain and how to keep your brain healthy, and how to protect it even if you are using it, and what to do for it when you want to recover from it. So, and we also know the brain is extremely resilient and it bounces back, okay? That was the IQ points, okay? That was the memory and things like that. But let's talk about other aspects of your brain. The other issues with your brain will restore themselves. They will restore themselves. The way that your neurotransmitters flow, that will restore itself. Your sleep pattern, that will restore itself. Although that's the last thing to come back around when people quit smoking weed, and you guys know if you've ever done that, what I'm talking about. That takes longer than anything to restore itself. So it's not that you can't, but it's like, you need to really, you have to actively do things. And the more you make your brain work at tasks that your brain does not like to work at, the better it will be. It's awesome right now to actually have things that when people come in with cognitive struggles, I can say, do this, this, and this, and that will actually rehab your brain. And it's as simple as the 5 things I talked about. It's as simple as giving your brain that really strong nutrient. And whether you're using weed or you're not using weed, do it, okay? It's protective for your brain. And that's kind of, we have so much information about the brain. I look back at my life and go, oh my God, it's so wonderful I have any brain cells firing, because all this stuff that we didn't know and now all this stuff that we do know. So it's not really designed to be hopeless, but it is designed for people to kind of, okay, well, I need to take a look. But that whole issue about not taking care of our brains, it's a big issue. It's not a little bitty issue. To me, that's a really big issue.
We have a few questions over here.
I just had a question before when you were talking about the digestive problems that it could cause. Is there like a specific label to that? I don't know if I'd heard it before, like to that condition.
Cannabis in Mauritius.
And
you're going to ask me to spell it, and I don't even know that I can.
I'm sorry, say that.
Cannabis in Mauritius.
And is there anywhere I could find more information about that? Because does that also restrict types of foods you could have after you have?
Okay, here's the deal. There's not much research on that, because what happens is those are primarily ER, visits. So those are primarily, people go to the ER, the docs are now saying don't smoke weed, but they don't really do much follow-up care with the kids. So I see the kids for follow-up, and what I know is that wouldn't say that there's foods that they need to restrict, but what I see with them is that it just takes them a long time to get healthy again, like to feel like they can eat and to feel like they can eat without getting ill and eat without getting sick and all those kinds of things. So, yes?
Hey there. So when we think about putting weed into our body, we mostly think about smoking it. But there's other methods like eating it. Some people put it into vapors.
Right.
Now, other than smoking it, are there any healthier alternatives to putting weed into your body?
Anything where you don't put smoke in your lungs is better for you. And, seriously, how can people go say, it doesn't hurt to smoke marijuana? I'm like, Yep, anybody who puts smoke in their lungs of any sort, that is not good. So anything you do other than that is good, okay, probably. But now let's look at the other issues. Let's look at when you change the route of ingestion. There are a couple things. There's lots of stuff we're not sure about because it changes the way it interacts with your brain. So it probably reduces some of the chemical, the biochemical response your body has as you break it down, the combustion of the smoke and that type of thing. But then we got to look at things like, what happens with edibles, okay? What is going on with that? We're not really sure what the long-term impact, if there's going to be a long-term impact with that. We know that we've had problems with kids way overdoing it because they get real impatient and they're not expecting it. And also what I would like to know, and it will be years before we know this, so I have to get my information from talking to my clients and see what they have to say. I really would like to know what happens when they vaporize it, what happens to the psychoactive substance in it, because we really have not researched that very extensively, and so we really don't know. So I wish I had the information to answer. I wish I had that information for my own use. So we don't know. We know it will change it because the route of ingestion of any drug changes the way your brain interacts with the drug. So from a physical health point of view, it's definitely safer because there's a type of lung cancer that's specifically connected to marijuana use. There's various lung cancers that are caused by numerous things, and there's a very specific kind of lung cancer which is directly connected to marijuana use, which I wasn't even researching that. I was sitting in a doctor's office reading a medical journal, and I was like, fine, I'm at the doctor's office, and I find more information about this.
Here we go.
Yes, my question is, as we know about secondhand smoking, does smoking marijuana affect people around them the same as the effects?
That's a good question. We know that we know about secondhand smoke from cigarette smoke, and we know how it impacts people. And the question, it's a good question, does marijuana smoke also impact people in the same way? Well, obviously, since people get high by hotboxing and things like that, we know that being in the presence of it is definitely going to impact you. Okay, we don't know maybe to the extent, like we've kind of nailed this down with cigarette smoke. I mean, we know it's, second, third-hand smoke. We know infants inhaling it off their parents' clothing has an impact on them in many, many ways. So we've really nailed it down with cigarette smoke. We haven't nailed it down so much with marijuana smoke. So yes, it's going to impact them. Anything that you put in your lungs is going to impact them. To what level, we're not sure. Once again, we'll find out eventually.
I think we have a question over here first, though.
Yes.
I know you brought up a couple of topics in regards to the actual smoking of the marijuana. Do you know what the effects are on the pulmonary system?
Well, at this point, once again, those effects. Okay, first of all, we know it affects your lungs. You're inhaling, especially if you're smoking, you're inhaling pesticides, rodenticides, so we know it impacts your lungs. We know there's a specific type of lung cancer connected to that, and we know, especially that it affects things like heart rate, respiration, especially when the concentration of THC goes up. We also know that when it is used in a really concentrated form, like with dabs, we know that it impacts your respiratory system. We don't have quite as many details because, once again, research is so far behind practice that we don't have all that research yet that I've seen. I always say that because there may be stuff I haven't seen.
Yes. So let's say there was a heavily marijuana user, and then they had a child. Would that child be affected?
That's interesting.
By it, would they
Yeah, that's interesting. The thing I was doing yesterday was doing some research on this because I saw an article that I had never seen before that was looking not so much at, and actually we'll talk about this, not so much about the short-term reproductive impact, but the long-term reproductive impact. And so what they're basically saying is that it is really kind of impacting things like learning issues with children, behavior issues with children, things like anxiety levels with children, not in infancy so much, but as they move into preschool. So I actually was going to do some research on with my own families about, the use of marijuana and what we're looking at diagnostically with their children. So there is some research, and it's really deep in the medical journals, so I've not been able to go to the primary source to speak to it the way I would like to. But yes, there's some research that indicates that. Now, what is not indicated is, what we don't know are the specifics, which is what I was looking for, is, so is it going to impact you if you're not smoking while you're pregnant? Okay. Is it going to impact, so we definitely know active use does, okay? But since it stays in your body for so long, it would probably, from what I'm looking at in the research, it's probably going to come out that, if you've been using 6 months prior to conception, there's really a likelihood that that is going to have some impact. Now, there was a piece of research, I'm trying to think where it was done, maybe Jamaica, I can't remember where it was done, that talked about infants whose mothers were actively using during pregnancy were calmer than infants whose mothers were not, okay? I don't think that surprises us, but they just looked at like 5 or 6 days and then 3 or 4 months of age. They didn't look at the long term. So the other thing that is fascinating to me is the whole concept of epigenetics, which kind of freaks me out a little bit, but the whole idea of epigenetics, and that is that whatever we participate in really can alter our DNA, which does not really come out in our children, but comes out in our grandchildren. And so so that really, we used to blame our parents, and now we get to blame our grandparents as well. But I mean, as minor as nutrition, which is not minor, but overeating sugar, okay? Overeating sugar has some really cognitive, significant epigenetic indications for, your grandchildren, because you actually alter your DNA by doing that. So what we haven't looked at, which I think would be fascinating to look at, is epigenetically, what are we talking about in terms of the altering or the changing of the DNA in the body and how we move forward with that. We're just starting to really study 20 years epigenetics. I mean, it's kind of a new field, but we're really realizing that we alter our DNA by what we do or don't do, what we put in our body, what activities we do, nutrition. That kind of freaks me out a little bit. It makes me feel way too responsible for future generations.
So like as far as like athletes and stuff that like smoke, I would say like daily and stuff, like we've seen like Olympic, medalists who smoke and stuff, like you said earlier in your presentation that like it decreases your like IQ. So like for the athletes that like play sports or like do sports daily, like wouldn't that affect their IQ to the sport and like?
Well, I will tell you this, that their level of physical activity during the time that they were actively smoking serves as a protective factor, which is likely to decrease that. Okay, so that's important. The other thing that's going to impact that is when they started and how long they've gone, and what they've been using, and what they're using besides that, like how much are they drinking in addition to that? What other substances are they using? So, but by being an athlete, and being physically active, it does decrease, it's a protective factor for your brain. Be interesting to see what would happen with that.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, how you doing? Let's go back to the medical part that you were talking about for marijuana. And you said, I think I heard you said that there's no proven fact that marijuana helps you medically. I read a lot of things that talks about how it helps with pain and nausea for chemotherapy. Having glaucoma, would you suggest that I leave here and go straight to a dispensary and get some marijuana?
Well, here's the thing. What I said was marijuana has 2 cannabinoids in it, okay? The medical research indicates that CBD can be extremely beneficial in many areas. The only research and documented indication for THC is in pain management in real specific cases, okay? Cancer being one of those, okay? So, so when you're talking about the medical benefits, marijuana has both of those cannabinoids in them, okay? So marijuana with higher levels of CBD has those medical benefits. That's like the clarification. Now, so that's what the deal is. So, so I really don't know if that answers your question or not.
We have one more over here.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
After age 24, the brain is completely developed. So at age 25, would heavy use of marijuana still lower your IQ points?
Probably not. Now, the brain is fully developed but ever changing. Okay, so it's like, unfortunately, once you're out of your young adulthood, then you need to look at what you're going to do to maintain your brain health. So, but my hunch is probably not. Okay, but remember, the brain is ever changing. So we don't really know that. But here's the thing, and I will say this in all fairness, seriously, it's really about what it does to your brain. It's much, much more dangerous to your brain when it's developing than once it's developed, across the board. So, I mean, in all fairness, I mean, and it is kind of scary when you look at, people who started smoking very, very, very young. So you're much safer when you're 25. And let's get real, you're much safer if you drink after the age of, the age of 25 as well. You're much safer. Really, we should, and of course, when you're under 25, you do all that stuff that could hurt your brain, get concussions from playing sports and skateboard and do all those high-risk things. So, so your brain is going to be much safer. It's not going to be as responsive to the negative impact.
We have a question over here.
Yes. Oh, okay. There's research looking specifically at young adults, college-age students, and their ability to process information. And so there's very specific research. There's actually a couple different research projects about that. And it's not that they can't pick up new information. I'm going to go back and talk about that in a little more detail. What they actually found was, because of what it does to the hippocampus, and it affects memory, it creates difficulty in learning, integrating, and utilizing new information. The more complex that information is, the more difficulty there is in that process. To me, that is a combination of several things, including what happens with the suppression of the memory substance from the hippocampus, and also the amount of energy it takes to complete and do really kind of like pretty small, simple task. And we're not sure what all the neuromechanisms are that create difficulties. So that's there's been several research projects on that indicate that that is the case. They're not really always really clear about why that is the case. The why that is the case is my guess on what else we know that it does. So, but it doesn't impact your ability to use what you've known previously. It impacts your ability to learn and process new information, which is really the kind of information that people encounter as they move into higher education.
On the last slide that it was just on, why do you think it affects females so differently?
Isn't that a great question? Well, why does it affect females differently? Well, male and female brains are different, as much as we try and pretend that they are not. They're different. And neurochemically, women and men process things very differently. Women process alcohol very differently. Women, and really in an unfair way, because, women, the level of use, 7 drinks a week for an adult female, more than 7 drinks a week, they're going to start manifesting physical and cognitive problems with that. For men, it's 14 drinks a week. That we know that, with alcohol, for example, women develop alcohol problems much, much more quickly than men do. So it's about how their body metabolizes. And everything we're learning about metabolism is about your DNA. So we really don't know. We've had very little research on, we have statistics about the fact that more girls and young women are smoking weed, but we don't have very little research that even looks at women. We're always looking at guys, So, but yeah, who knows?
Hi, I just had a question. I've never smoked marijuana before, but I've had multiple concussions.
People assume that I've have, but I just wanted to know what are the similarities between concussions and effects of marijuana.
That's interesting. You've not smoked marijuana. You've had multiple concussions, and so and so you have some symptoms of people who have smoked marijuana. Absolutely, because it does impact those aspects of the brain, and so I don't know that we necessarily can pinpoint it, but we know that it's in both situations does create some trauma within the brain. But the other thing that we know that's interesting is that there are things you can do to help your brain recover from a concussion, and there are the exact same things that you can do to help your brain recover from marijuana use or to protect your brain if you're currently using. And I want to talk to you about that. I actually work with the National Center for Traumatic Brain Trauma because I've had clients and so I've learned a lot by working with them, and I have a lot of young people who have had concussions. So first of all, and these are protective factors, okay? Take a really good quality omega-3 vitamin. I know that sounds weird, but omega-3 is it actually changes and heals the actual structure of your brain. Anybody that I've worked with at the National Institute has had like large doses of that, like 5,000 milligrams of that. So what it does, it's a huge brain nutrient. So it kind of helps your brain recover in the learning process and memory. It's an anti-inflammatory, which reduces inflammation in your brain and your body. It is an antioxidant, so it cleans all those toxins out of your brain. So that's one. And this is on the protocol for marijuana recovery as well. The second thing is complex B vitamins. There are about 6 or 7 Bs, and every single one of them has a very complex, sophisticated neurochemical benefit to your brain. So complex B vitamins, vitamin D3, and when you take the complex B, especially if you're trying to protect your brain from marijuana, niacin is like a vacuum cleaner, goes through and cleans out the toxins. Music, okay, when you're physically able, physical activity, especially with marijuana, there's parts of the brain that only recovers with rigorous physical activity. Who knew that? And the other thing is making your brain practice things it does not like to do. We actually know that the brain is extremely resilient and it's very fluid and it can change, but we tend to not like to do the things that are hard to do. So making your brain, spending 15 or 20 minutes of your day forcing your brain to do a task that is difficult, those are all things that will help it recover. Okay.
We have a question back here.
I just have a quick question. What are your views on using marijuana as opposed to using methamphetamines as antidepressant as they are approved by the FDA? What is your view on that? I also have another question. What do you think on the fact that the FDA classifies marijuana as a Class A drug in lines with methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine, when it has proven not to have less severe effects on the brain and on the body than these drugs have? What do you think on that?
And what I said in the very beginning is that issue that when they made it illegal and classified it, they did not look at science. They looked at opinions. They did not look at science. Had they really looked at science, they would not have classified it. And not only that, the scientists and the treatment people were saying, this is a mistake to do this. So I think it was a serious mistake. Now let's talk about using marijuana instead of methamphetamines. Here's the situation with that. Methamphetamines are not indicated for anxiety and depression. In fact, they create anxiety. They are, however, indicated for treatment of attention and focus issues, okay? So that particular substance is used for attention and focus issues for people who have ADHD. We also know that marijuana creates neurochemically conditions that mimic ADHD. Most of the clients I see who have smoked marijuana have been diagnosed with ADHD. So I think that we're kind of talking about two different things, and it makes symptoms of ADHD worse. So that's the only clinically prescribed use of methamphetamines is to treat attention and focus issues. Nope. Okay.
Any other questions? We have a question over here and one over there. Okay, awesome. It's not time for us to leave yet, but when we end up heading out around 12:15, all these yellow cards that you guys have with you, and if there's any empty ones near you, we'd ask you guys to fill those out. We use those for programming for next year.
Okay, so we know you don't support marijuana on a recreational use, but would you still recommend it for a medical use, such as for a war veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or maybe a cancer patient who uses it to kind of relieve their pain and make life easier?
So absolutely, I support the appropriate use of medical marijuana. And we know that those uses in particular, exactly what you're saying, PTSD is about processing and dealing with past memories. It's the CBD, it's a non-psychoactive substance that proves to have some really strong benefits for that as well as cancer. So my point being, if we're going to respect it, we use it as indicated and as researched clinically. So for those purposes, I wish we would research CBD, okay, which is different than THC because, as I said before, high levels of THC just kind of lowered the benefit of the CBD. So we really need to look at what is it that we're using. But to say that marijuana treats those things, marijuana doesn't treat. CBD, which is a cannabinoid of marijuana, is the ingredient that treats, and it's the non-psychoactive ingredient. So absolutely, and that's why I separate the two, because if we're really going to, use it and help people and use it respected, we need to understand those are two completely different cannabinoids present in the plant.
Janice, we have a question over here.
Hi, can you give us more information on the link between marijuana use and suicide?
Okay. The connection between marijuana use and suicide?
Yes.
I would say to you that I don't know that we have the why, okay? We don't have the why. We just know that particularly among adolescents and young adults, like 18, 19, I guess they're adolescents, I consider them young adults. We just know that when you look at suicide rates and you look at history of what all's going on in their life, that is one of the primary indicators that repeats itself in suicide. We don't know why. We're not sure why. We're not sure what the connection is between the psychiatric issues and the use of substances. We just know that the alcohol and marijuana use are very highly connected. So we don't know why. We haven't researched that piece of it that I know of. I have to say, maybe I haven't read it yet. Okay. Other questions?
Hello, my name is George.
Okay, hi, yes.
My question is this: as I used to smoke marijuana, and I smoked it maybe for a year, in very high levels, and then I stopped. And this was around maybe when I was 18. So ever since then, I haven't smoked. I'm 26 now, and I've noticed that my memory has suffered a lot from it, and I wanted to know if from what I understood, it was supposed to be only perhaps maybe just momentary, but it has become a very I don't want to say a big problem, but it has become a prominent issue in my life now. So
that's kind of interesting when you talk to old people like me, who smoke weed. They all talk about how bad their memory is, and it really has to do with the decrease in the hippocampus and the fact that the short-term memory substance has been suppressed. But I would suggest that the reason the guys who we did the research on that never gained their IQ points, the reason they never gained their IQ points is we didn't know how to tell people how to help their brain get healthy again. Now we know that, and so we know we can impact that in a positive way. So what I would suggest to you is look at that protocol. Seriously, it will help you, okay? It's on all the protocols from all the major medical schools, and that's one of the first things I do with my clients. Omega-3s, complex B, niacin, it's a B, but a little extra niacin, D3s, the physical activity. 5, when it comes to helping your brain recover from all substance use, including marijuana, 5 hours of rigorous physical activity a week. Learn to play a musical instrument. I know that sounds weird. It literally changes the structure of your brain. It's just incredible. I wish I could go into the 20 things that it does for your brain, as well as physical. There's a piece of your brain that really will not recover if you don't do physical activity. And make your brain do something hard, that you do not like to do. Your brain will respond, okay? So try those things. And that's the thing we never talk about. How do you protect your brain? And, if you are going to smoke or if you have smoked, what do you do to help yourself recover? And so I think that's real important that we talk about that because we have that information, which I think is so exciting that we have it.
Hi. My question's kind of related to his, but, you mentioned like certain receptors being shut down, like when you smoke marijuana? And is there anything that permanently is damaged, like that can't be kind of replenished after stopping smoking for forever or however long? And can those receptors come back to life? Is kind of my question.
The question, it's a very good question. Is there anything that is permanently damaged that can't be repaired? Okay. Well, if you don't work to repair it, yes, it probably won't be repaired, okay, which is the case with those young men that I talked about that we tracked them till they were 35. We had no idea anything, much less how to repair it. So you have to actively work to now kind of take care of your brain. You have to be more careful with your brain than otherwise that you would have otherwise been. And you have to look at what else you're doing to it, you know. So if you quit smoking weed but start drinking like an idiot, then, that's going to impact your brain development too. So, so it really depends on that. It depends on how much you smoked, when you started, hugely significant, when you started, what level of concentration, and what kinds of things you've done, okay? Now, here's what will recover, okay? What will recover is the internal THC, that internal cannabinoid, that will recover, okay? What will recover is your hippocampus will get better and get healthier. But the problem is we only know what we know, okay? So there's so much that we don't yet know because of the complexities of this plant, because of all the substances that are active. And we only really know what 2 of those substances do. So, but here's the deal. Our brain is resilient. If we work it, if we do those things I mentioned to recover, it will bounce back. Is it going to look the same as it did before? Maybe not. Depending on all those other factors, but it will be better. And it will, if you do those things religiously, it will continue to be better. If you're really consistent with those things, it will continue to be better.
Janice, we have a question on the left over here.
Yes.
Okay, so I probably started smoking when I was like 17 roughly, and it was like in a more so depression type of time, but I never smoked really heavily, but I did smoke for like at least 2 years or so. And I feel like nothing's really changed, but what do you think about that? Like, even now, I still don't smoke all the time. Now, my mom, on the other hand, she thinks like, okay, well, I don't think you should do it at all. But I feel like if you take, even if it's recreational, if it's only respectful amounts, then it should still be like not a bad response to it.
Okay. Right. So the question is, if you didn't smoke a lot, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'm just going to talk, once again, it really is about, I don't know what you mean when you say a little bit. I only say that because I have kids who say, I only smoke like a little bit, like 7 times a day. I'm like, honey, that's not a little bit, okay? You tell me how much, I'll tell you if it is much. So, and I don't really want to put you on the spot, but so that would kind of be part of it. The other thing too is if you're going to smoke at all, do those things, those protective things. Please do those protective things. And the other thing is if you started smoking or continue to smoke because you have mood issues, get those taken care of as well, because we know it doesn't solve the mood issues. And we know over time the mood issues, if they go untreated, because that's not treating it, they're probably going to get worse. So that's what I would say to you. And what it does, how it kind of matters what the structure of your brain was when you started. Does that make sense? That if everybody in this room smoked weed, you would all like it for a different reason, or some of you wouldn't like it, but it would be a different reason. And the reason would be dictated more about the structure of your brain, and the differences in how people's brains are structured, how they process it, how they metabolize it. So, but what I would say to you is do those things I just mentioned. Do yourself a favor, protect that brain. It will, and it won't hurt you. In fact, it's all pretty good for mood stuff as well.
I think we got time for 2 more questions, right?
Back here on the right.
Hey, there's a couple of artists and musicians that claim that and say that marijuana helps them unlock
I'm sorry,
creative.
I can't see you, and I can't. I hate
sorry.
talking to people I can't see.
Here I am.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
All right, so there's a couple of musicians and artists and that claim and say that marijuana helps them unlock creative potential, maybe unlocks a subconscious mindset. Do you think that there's any scientific proof behind that, or if there's any truth to that at all that you found or maybe that you know about?
So the idea that it helps unlock creative processes, well, when really what neurochemically is going on is it is a perception-altering substance. It alters your perception of your thoughts, of your environment, of time, of place. So it's, part of the psychoactive reaction to it is that it's a perception-altering substance. So when you are in a situation, you're having thoughts, your perception of those thoughts are going to shift, and they're going to change because of that. There are other things that alter your perception, but marijuana does that. That's part of the attraction to the high. So does it unlock things? No, it just switches your perception of things. And so those are two different things. You don't want to be unlocking anything in your brain, because what's on the other side of those locked doors is psychosis. We want those things to be locked. We don't want to go there, okay? So you don't unlock things, but you do feel a different perception, which creates a different thought process, which then, creates that, what are you going to do with that, okay? What are you going to do with that when you're no longer under the influence? And can you take that perception shift and move it into action? Okay, that would be the question.
Hi, my name is Alma. I recently caught my teenager smoking weed, and he's a very, he's a happy-go-lucky kid. He's never had issues in school. He does pretty well in school, but he did say that it made him more calm and it made him concentrate more, and I don't know if I believe that.
Okay. Yes, it made him more calm. Nice question. It makes you more calm because as I was talking before about how it kind of freezes out, slows down, calms down that whole neurochemical process in your brain where your neurons are producing all of those mood-regulating, anxiety-regulating neurochemicals. So while people are high, they're more calm. They feel chilled. There's a neurochemical reason. It's because they're kind of freezing out that process of regulation, okay? So he's probably telling you the truth. Now, whether or not he focuses, I think that would depend on the definition of focusing, okay? So does that mean that he can sit still? And what is he focusing on? He's probably not focusing on his homework, but he probably is focusing on the thoughts that are going on in his head. And so he feels that he can probably think better because he's probably fascinated with the thoughts going on in his head because it's a new experience. In the long term, okay, and that's really kind of the catch that adolescents get into, and I feel really sorry for them because it's very sneaky, like sneaks up on them, that what they get into is, I really like how this feels. Well, yeah, you like how it feels because it's artificially firing your dopamine. That always feels good. It's freezing out the neurochemicals, making you feel like not worrying about anything going on. But that doesn't mean it's neurochemically good or beneficial. And the really bad thing, when I say it's unfortunate, it's sneaky, that all of a sudden that then over time, especially if the use progresses, which to be honest with you, it usually does, you end up having more anxiety. I have a lot of young men who tell me they use their marijuana to treat their anxiety. And I ask them, A, what was your anxiety like when you started? Okay, from a 1 to 5. B, what's it like now? Well, it went from a 3 to a, 7.5. So obviously, and you smoked a lot of weed, so obviously it's not helping you with your anxiety. So I think that people kind of fall into that trap because it feels good. It feels good because it stimulates your dopamine. People like that, That doesn't mean that it's positive. It just means it feels good in the moment. Lots of things do.
Janice, on behalf of Moraine Valley Community College, the psychology department, and our entire audience, we'd love to thank you for joining us and presenting.
Great questions. Thank you.